Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central TV. It's time for news now. I am Judith at Atibi. Top stories at this hour. As another strike threatens to rock Nigeria, federal government urge aviation unions to shelve planned action. Zimbabwean government suppression of dissent continues with arrested activists denied bail in Zimbabwe. Death toll from Uganda landslide rises to 34. We'll bring you details shortly. I'll begin the news by this hour with news that the federal government has appealed to aviation unions to shelve their plans for a strike over the deduction of 50% of the internal revenue of aviation agencies. In a memo dated August 14th, the unions comprising the National Union of Air Transport Employees, the Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, the Association of Nigeria Aviation Professionals, and the National Association of Aircraft Pilots and Engineers, and the Amalgamated Union of Public Corporation, Civil Service Technical and Recreation Services Employees had threatened to strike. But the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, has appealed to them to shelve the planned strike. Keyamo assured the Workers' Union that President Bola Tinubu is very concerned about the improvement of the aviation sector. And now to health matters. The federal government has intensified monitoring and screening procedures at all entry points into the country in response to the monkeypox outbreak. The coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Mohammed Pate, disclosed this in a statement signed by his special advisor on media and external relations, Tashikama Hala. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention on Thursday reported 39 confirmed cases of Mpox, but no death across 33 states and the Federal Capital Territory from the beginning of 2024. The minister explained that the government had implemented a new mandate requiring all travelers to complete an online health declaration form before departing for the country. Aid workers have raised alarm at an alarming increase of severely malnutrition children with life-threatening complications at medical facilities in northern Nigeria. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization office in the northeastern city of Maiduguri, Nigeria has the largest number of food insecure people globally at 31.8 million. The aid workers in this area have also warned that unprecedented number of children in northern Nigeria are suffering from acute malnutrition, which has also led to other conditions such as tuberculosis, acute diarrhea, and stunted children's growth. More than 52,000 patients were diagnosed with severe acute malnutrition across 7 states in 2023, and 2,693 of them dead. They're calling for more action from authorities and humanitarian organizations in this region, including preventative action. Away from health matters, the Minister of Youth Development, Jamila Bayo Ibrahim, has highlighted the objectives and achievements of her recent visit to Equatorial Guinea, where she accompanied President Bola Tinubu, saying the primary focus of the trip was to explore and enhance opportunities for youth development in partnership with Equatorial Guinea. Speaking to newsmen in an interview session, Bayo Ibrahim said both nations are on the verge of finalizing a significant treaty on youth empowerment set to be officially confirmed at the upcoming Joint Commission later this year. She noted that the proposed agreement is expected to promote collaboration in areas such as skills development, entrepreneurship, and peer learning among the youth of both countries.
There are discussions on defense agreement, not signed yet, but there is a joint committee for joint patrol, policing and security on our borders in the Gulf of Guinea. And that discussion is on, and when constituted, I'm sure we will have robust engagement or patrols on the sea that will prevent all illegalities happening around the Gulf of Guinea.
is there likely to be any agreement between Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea having to do with how to limit access to oil theft along?
Yeah. This is part of it. The security patrol will certainly check illegal movements of crude oil from both countries, and this will really help to reduce the illegal movement of illegal oil.
Thank you very much. The Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund says its target is to declassify NSITF as a revenue-generating agency and increase the number of corporate organizations registered by 1 million yearly. The NSITF Managing Director Oluwaseun Falaye stated this during the agency's retreat for the Committees on Labour and Employment of the Senate and House of Representatives in Lagos. Falaye, disclosed plans to collaborate with the lawmakers to drive compliance, as many MDAs had not been serious about playing their role or their emoluments to the funds.
Members of Nigeria's National Assembly and the leadership of the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF, have called for a review of the presidential directive on a 50% automatic deduction from internally generated revenues of federal government-owned enterprises. Speaking at a two-day NSITF retreat for the Senate and House Committee on Labour, Employment and Productivity, the lawmakers agreed that the NSITF is also not treasury-funded, does not draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, and ought to be removed from the schedule of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. They called on the MD of the fund, Falaye Oluwaseun, to step up efforts to classify the trust fund as a non-revenue generating agency.
I think as National Assembly there's a need for us to address this issue with the Honorable Minister of Finance, for him to understand the difference between, yes, you may understand, but when somebody is looking for money at government, they seem not to do as if to understand the difference between revenue generation and self-funding. NSITF is self-funding. It's not a revenue generation company.
The NSITF boss said the agency's management was in Lagos State on a two-day retreat to discuss how to collaborate with lawmakers to achieve the objectives of the trust fund.
Let me be clear, because we've had to deal with this in our various engagements with the relevant agencies. NSITF is not a revenue-generating agency of government. We are trustees mandated by law to manage funds for the protection of Nigerian workers. Our missions aligns with other international standards, like I said, such as International Labour Organization and International Social Security Administration.
The NSITF was set up to formulate the employee scheme where the fund provides cash and non-cash support to injured or diseased workers arising from hazard from their work activities.
The Benue State Police Command has confirmed the kidnap of close to 20 medical students on transit to Enugu around Otukpo in Otukpo local government area of the state. The students were said to be traveling in a convoy of two buses and were coming from the northern part of the country when they ran into the ambush Thursday evening at about 5:30 p.m. The public relations officer of the command, and that is Superintendent SP Catherine Anene, confirmed that the victims were en route to Enugu for a program when they ran into the kidnappers around Otukwe. We'll bring you more details on this story as they unfold. In the meantime, earlier Friday, a human rights group called on the President Bola Tinubu, to look into accountability and openness in governance, as well as exhibition of due process of law appointments and removals of public officers in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The center of discussion bordered on the exclusive exercise of power of President Tinubu in appointing and removing an inspector of police, which is currently being occupied by Mr. Kayode Egbetokun. News Central's Bettina Nweli reports.
In May, a bill seeking to raise the retirement age of police officers scaled second reading at the House of Representatives. Tajuddin Abbas, Speaker of the House, and Abubakar Yeleman, a lawmaker from Jigawa, sponsored the bill which proposes to raise the retirement age of police officers from 60 to 65 and from 35 to 40 years of service. The bill seeks to amend Section 18 of the Nigerian Police Act 2020.
It is amazing to note the overzealousness of the distinguished members of National Assembly in passing a bill to amend the Nigerian Police Act 2020 to accommodate seat-titism of Mr. Kayode Egbetokun in office despite the attainment of mandatory 60 years of age. We have a serious ground to doubt the democratic credential and loyalty of our lawmakers to the Nigerian people because of the jet speed they used in passing the amendment bill without public hearing.
According to Section 7 of the Police Act 2020, the person appointed to the office of the IGP shall hold office for 4 years. In June 2023, President Bola Tinubu appointed Mr. Kayode Egbetokun as the IGP. Egbetokun was born on September 4, 1964, and is expected to retire in September 2024 when he will be 60 years old.
The record of performance of Mr. Kayode Egbetokun is so abysmal that his continuation in office as #1 police officer will be a disservice to the country. He has not demonstrated any resourceful capacity to run a modern police command structure in an heterogeneous country like Nigeria. It is a violation of law of the land to bend the law to serve the interests of an individual to remain in office.
While it is alleged that the bill was originally introduced during the 8th Assembly but did not progress beyond the initial stages before the Assembly's dissolution, the onus now lies on the 10th Assembly to uphold the law to serve the best interests of the people. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nweli.
You're watching news now on News Central TV. We go on a short break. Stay with us. And you're welcome back. Full business activities have begun within the Jos Bukuru metropolis as Governor Caleb Mutufwang had lifted the curfew earlier imposed on the area. Economic activities had been obstructed, accounting for a decline in the revenue generation of the state through individual and group business activities. News Central's Chizoba Anyonwe tells us more.
4th August was the day a 24-hour curfew was imposed by the governor of Plateau State, resulting from unrest by youths in Bauchi Road area of Jos and Zololo Junction on the 4th day of the peaceful #End Bad Governance in Nigeria protest in the state. Since then, residents had no choice than to observe the curfew hours for the safety of both lives and property within the Jos Bukuru metropolis. Following calls for further reviews of the curfew, the governor gave heed and did the needful.
It's because of the compliance with the curfew, and of course the security has improved, and the intelligence community have given us an intelligence that is favorable, that they can manage. If you notice, we lifted it in bits, and now we've lifted it in its entirety. And we want to thank Plateau people for the compliance, for their resolve to cohabit peacefully with one another, and of course for the ambience of tranquility that we have created.
For some residents who spoke to News Central, it is a welcome development.
We thank God how what the governor did, because he did it to protect the life of people and the properties of people. They removed the curfew and many people go back to their businesses. Nothing is happening again. We thank God for that.
We have missed a lot of things outside there. So we thank God for the governor have seen our plea and he has lifted off the curfew.
With the assurance of security on the plateau, residents are urged not to relent in feeding security operatives with relevant information.
I can assure you that the citizens of Plateau can sleep with their two eyes closed, knowing that we are on ground to ensure that their safety is our priority. They have been helping us with useful information, and I also want to confirm to them here that their information being given to us is effectively used.
Now, as people go about their lawful businesses, it is hoped that they continue to be law-abiding, maintaining peace, so that the kind of unrest that happened, that brought about this curfew, would not happen again. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyowe.
Let's also tell you that a fire outbreak occurred in the early hours of Friday at a 7-story building on Sani Adewale Street, Lagos Island local government area. Now, this was made known in a statement by the director of the Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service, Margaret Adesheye. Adesheye said the Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service received a distress call at past 5 a.m. and promptly responded with firefighters from Ebute Elefun, Sari and Lekki 1 stations. Adesheye confirmed that the situation is under control and no casualties have been recorded or reported. Preliminary investigations suggest that the fire was triggered by an electrical surge. In the meantime, the Lagos State government has announced a temporary traffic diversion at the Ikeja Along bus stop on the Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway. From Saturday to Sunday, midnight to 4 a.m., the Oshodi-bound lane will be closed to allow for the safe demolition of the old pedestrian bridge. Only one lane will be open to motorists between the Ile-Zik bus stop and Konoy filling station. The diversion will not affect motorists on the Dokpemu Abulegba bound road or side of the road. The Lagos State Traffic Management Authority says it will manage traffic flow to minimize inconveniences. Motorists are advised to be patient as the closure is necessary for the safe removal of the pedestrian bridge. Protective measures will be put in place to ensure safety during the demolition. To provide a wellspring of knowledge and inspiration for future generations, Nigerians are actively making efforts towards safeguarding their heritage by speaking about it and championing trends and lifestyles towards this cause. News Center's Chidima Ona provides more in this report.
The pressures and influence of modernization and globalization in Nigerian culture have often been a major concern. From traditional music and dance to ancient crafts and oral histories, the drive to safeguard these cultural treasures is becoming increasingly vital.
All the way from arts, media, entertainment, education, down to even faith, to government, to politics, business, and commerce. So it's about telling the African story through all of those pillars and making it as rich as possible and focusing on positive affirmations around the continent, around the country Nigeria, for instance, and telling that story so loud, so bright, and so bold to the rest of the world.
So that it's important for everyone to ensure that our culture and our heritage is being preached on a daily basis. So for the children, we need to constantly let them know what our cultures are and how important it is for us to remain who we are, so that we do not take on other people's culture and forget what our culture is.
With various cultural attire, artifacts, and over 525 native languages spoken in Nigeria, preserving the heritage will depend heavily on documenting and revitalizing traditional practices. However, the conversation on whether Western culture takes away from Nigerian tradition frequently pops up.
If the family is doing their duties well, teaching their children what they should know about their culture, where they are coming from, the influence of the culture, of the Western culture, will not be much on the children. You get? So what we should do here is to teach our children what they should know about our culture, what they should know about where we are coming from, and the basic things they should know.
And we have to start from grassroots. When I say grassroots, to start from home. Let's encourage our children to speak our language. Let's encourage our children to take our local food. Let's go back to how our own parents, forefathers, treated us. So discipline, culture is gone. So I think these are the ways by which we can encourage our children embracing our culture.
The hope for Nigeria's diverse cultural legacy would not only survive but flourish as citizens constantly enrich and promote it on global platforms. In Lagos for News Central, Chidinma Ona.
And preserving our culture is all that matters. You're watching News Now on News Central TV. Coming up, as unemployment rate increases in South Africa, citizens blame foreigners for lack of jobs. We'll bring you details after the break. Join us again. And you're welcome back. Earlier, we told you about aid workers having raised alarm at the alarming increase of severely malnutrition children with life-threatening complications at medical facilities in northern Nigeria. And so to have a more in-depth discussion and to bring more nuance and perspective and insight into this discussion, I'm being joined by MSF's Nigeria representative, Dr. Simba Tirima. He joins me live via video chat. Well, Dr. Tirima, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you for doing this with us.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, press for time, so let's get started quickly. Can you just describe the current malnutrition situation in northern Nigeria, particularly in terms of prevalence and severity?
Yes, the current malnutrition crisis, as you said, in northern Nigeria has escalated to unprecedented levels. That at this moment, it's quite dire. And if you look at numbers from last year to this year, we've seen a sharp increase that actually is overwhelming for our folks who are working on ground. Currently, we have more than 35,000 kids admitted in our facilities, and in some places, really, we are out of bed capacity as well. So we're seeing, again, completely unprecedented situation.
And I have to ask about how this malnutrition is affecting children in terms of physical health, cognitive development, and even overall well-being. Are there any specific micronutrient deficiencies or types of malnutrition that are prevalent to these regions, and in this case, northern Nigeria?
Yeah, first and foremost, actually, the consequences can lead to death. We've seen children who come to our facilities in a very dire situation. Of course, micronutrients and basic nutrition, when it's lacking, children eventually, if they don't die, if they're not treated, end up with lifelong neurocognitive deficits. It affects their brains and general development. In fact, sometimes we talk of stunting, and we don't realize that part of stunting can be associated with malnutrition. But what we really worry about as an emergency medical organization is the fact that if some of these kids are not treated immediately, they may lose their lives. And we've seen that in the past, and we see that today as well. So apart from cognitive development, of course, they have weakened immune systems and they become very, very vulnerable to other ailments as well. And in the north, especially, we see problems with vaccine-preventable diseases such as measles, meningitis, and things like this. And so if malaria comes, if pneumonia, severe acute, or watery diarrhea, things like that, they can really threaten the lives of these children.
And I have to ask, what types of nutrition interventions are you and your team, currently implementing, and how has the MSF, been engaging with local communities to promote, healthy nutrition practices and even behavioral change?
Yes, so our current nutrition interventions are quite simple, actually, especially if those children are not severely acutely malnourished. So we have two phases. We have with a moderately acute malnourished kids, we treat them in our outpatient facilities with something we call plumpinut. It's a paste that is basically made of peanuts, but has micronutrients, has some energy, and kids can recover from MAM within a short time. But the ones that come to us and are admitted have other complications. So it's not only that we give them this paste called plumpinut, but we have to manage other situations as well, other conditions. If they have measles, if they have meningitis, if they have malaria, if they have severe or acute watery diarrhea and things like this, then those interventions require even high dependency units to kick in, where these are intensively managed. Otherwise, they may not make it. And then the second phase, of course, yes, we are working with communities very closely, even teaching them how to do the mid-upper arm circumference, which is an indicator of whether a child is malnourished, so they can do it themselves. And so some trainings happen in that aspect. We also, in some of our projects, are engaging women in food demonstrations to see if they can really shore up the use of locally available foods, especially for the moderately malnourished children. And so, yes, we engage the communities. Of course, in every facility where we work very closely with state governments as well. So it's a collaborative effort.
Well, I want to say well done, and well done on all the work that you're doing in northern Nigeria. Once again, thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate you for doing this with us.
Thank you.
And that's Dr. Simba Tirima. He is the MFF's Nigeria representative, and just talking to us about the alarming number of malnutrition children in northern Nigeria. We'll switch from Nigeria to southern Africa, and this time to South Africa, where the high unemployment rate in the country has led to locals often blaming foreigners for taking jobs they say are meant for them. According to Stats SA, unemployment rate in South Africa increased to 33.5% according to recent statistics. For years, intergenerational protests have often erupted throughout the country, with frustrations about unemployment, crime, and poor service delivery frequently spilling over onto foreign nationals. News Central's Bongani Ziziba reports.
In a nation rich in diversity, a cloud of uncertainty looms large. South Africa, with its deep-seated history of inequality, faces an outcry that echoes through its township and cities. Foreigners are taking our jobs. In response to these cries, the Department of Employment and Labor has taken action. Raids on businesses suspected of employing undocumented foreigners have become a common sight.
Arrived here, we are told there are few employees who ran away. We suspect it's because they knew that they don't have a permit to be here. But we found other employees who have visitors' visas that are not allowing them to get employment in South Africa. They are actually written in bold, not allowed for employment. It's not allowed for you to get employment. So we had to deal with that. Home Affairs dealt with that and handed them over to SAPS. And also the employer now has a responsibility to ensure that whoever gets to be employed in his or her business is a legal citizen or has at least legal documents if then is somebody who comes from outside the country.
This has frequently led to conflict between immigrants and groups of South Africans who blame foreign nationals for taking jobs and businesses supposedly meant for the locals. South Africa's government is determined to use new policies and legislation to cap the number of foreigners working in the formal and informal economy.
Number or the rate of unemployment in South Africa is alarming. So the youth unemployment expanded statistics is at 59 point something percent. So you ask yourself, because it can't be government working with the private sector to create jobs. So if then you've got establishments like this, like the one that we are in now, that employ people illegally, what does it mean to the issue of us dealing with unemployment? There's a lot of work that we need to do. Hence I put it on top of my agenda to say we shall inspect across the board compliance with the laws of this country. But it's not the only issue that we are looking at, because one of our responsibilities as a department is to ensure that there is creation and retention of decent jobs.
Despite the tensions, many foreigners argue they are not takers but givers, creating their own employment instead of relying solemnly on the job market.
But when I came to South Africa, there is no job for me to do. So I end up making a living with what I'm doing by fixing a phone, you know. So by people saying that South Africa saying that Nigerians or Zimbabwe or whatever are taking job from them, no.
Some are doing shoemaker, some are unlike me. I'm selling laptop chargers and phones. That's what I do as my occupation.
However, some locals say they cannot turn against their African brothers and sisters.
Foreigners, I mean, for me, it's not a problem for them to be here because they create jobs for themselves. They're not stealing jobs, they're creating jobs. The reason why South Africans are complaining is because they don't get jobs. They don't hunt for jobs.
The question on everyone's mind remains, can the spirit of brotherhood conquer the divisions created by fear and unemployment? As South Africa navigates these turbulent waters, only time will tell if compassion will triumph over conflict. In Johannesburg, for News Central, Bongani Siziba.
Zimbabwe authorities arrested anti-government opposition politicians and protesters and denied bail to 3 activists on Friday in what rights groups said was an intensifying crackdown on the eve of a regional summit. Security was tight in Harare as leaders of the 16-nation Southern African Development Community, SADC, arrived ahead of their summit on Saturday, at which President Emmerson Mnangagwa will take over as chairman of the regional alliance. Authorities arrested separately 2 politicians from the main opposition Citizens Coalition for Change, CCC. They join around 160 opposition politicians and activists who have been detained since mid-June, according to rights groups including Amnesty International.
That we do not agree with the reasons given by the court for denying them bail. But as you know, we know better. If a decision is made, it has been made. We disagree with it. We disagree with the charges of disorderly conduct. In any case, you know that disorderly conduct mostly attracts a level 2 fine, which is $15. So in our respectful view, this is a matter where they might actually be serving much more than the sentence that they would obtain, assuming they would be convicted. Well, the way forward is that we will immediately file an appeal against the refusal of bail by the Magistrates Court. We appeal to the High Court.
The death toll from the massive garbage landslide in Uganda has risen to 34 as 4 more bodies were recovered from the site on Friday. People, homes and livestock were buried in mountains of fetid waste when the landslide or landfill collapsed during the weekend. An MP for the area had warned that the number of those missing could still rise. The recovering of victims was continuing, he said, despite part of the landfill site flooding, preventing the use of excavators. And we move now to Sudan, where the Sudanese paramilitary forces are said to have killed at least 80 people in a southeastern village as U.S.-sponsored talks seeks to end 16 months of devastating war. The assault occurred in Jagini village in the state of Sana'a on Thursday. The survivor said the paramilitaries had initially faced resistance from local villagers, before returning in full force. Ceasefire talks began on Wednesday in Switzerland, hosted by U.S., Saudi and Swiss mediators, though the Sudanese army refused to take part. And you're watching news now on News Central TV. Still to come. Protests intensify over doctors' rape and murder in India. We'll bring you details after the break. Join us again. Thousands of protesters have marched through the streets of Calcutta on Friday demanding justice after the rape and murder of a doctor, which has sparked nationwide outrage. Doctors have also intensified their own protests and strikes on Friday in solidarity with the enraged citizens of India, with protests and rallies also held in the capital, New Delhi, and other cities over the brutal killing. The Indian Medical Association, the country's largest grouping of doctors, has announced a nationwide strike of non-emergency services on Saturday. The discovery of the 31-year-old's blooded body on August 9th at a state-run hospital in the eastern city of Calcutta had sparked nationwide protests. And now for more on this, I'm joined by international correspondent Afia Hagen. Afia, thank you for coming on. Afia, can you give us some insight into what happened that led to the Reclaim the Night marches taking place across India?
Well, last Friday morning, a 31-year-old trainee female doctor retired to sleep in a seminar hall. This was after a grueling shift in one of India's oldest hospitals. She was later found in that seminar hall, on the podium of that seminar hall, half naked, terribly badly beaten, and she had been raped by probably more than one person. And the discovery of her body absolutely outraged doctors and nurses who are mostly female in India because of the conditions that they have to endure. And people are angry, rightly. Tens of thousands of women have joined this Reclaim the Night march because they want to be able to live in independence without fear of being raped or sexually assaulted. And also, this is about the violence that doctors and nurses in the country face. Now, reports, regardless of gender, of doctors being assaulted by their patients or by patients' relatives, that's happened to about more than half of doctors in India. And that gets widespread attention. Women make up 30% of India's doctors and 80% of nursing staff, and are more likely to be the victim of these assaults than their male counterparts. And that's really what has sparked these protests across India.
That's sad indeed, and India has always grappled with just gender-based violence and sexual abuse and violence against women. But how have the authorities reacted to the attack and the protests?
Well, on Monday, thousands of doctors halted their services, went on strike, and of course, this disrupted patient services all across India. Now, on Thursday, yesterday, the Indian Medical Association talked about the hooliganism released on protesting students and announced that they were going to withdraw emergency services for 24 hours from 6 a.m. local time on Saturday. Now, they said in their statement, doctors, especially women, are vulnerable to violence because of the nature of the profession. It's for the authorities to provide safe to provide for the safety of doctors inside hospital and campuses. And the MIA, the Indian Medical Association, requires the sympathy of the nation with the just cause of its doctors. Now, the Federation of Resident Doctors Association, another top doctors association, was also on strike. They resumed their strike on Tuesday and continue on strike as well. And of course, you have the political blame game. That was definitely going to happen, with the opposition party calling the government and saying that they are orchestrating attacks on people that are protesting. Now, the government have refuted that allegation and has blamed political outsiders for stoking the violence.
Well, Afia, many thanks. We hope to see how this will pan out, and maybe this might just be the catalyst for change that India needs. But again, Afia, many thanks. We appreciate you for doing this with us. Afia Hagen is our international correspondent. The 2024 Paris Olympics has been concluded, and Team Nigeria's poor performance continues to raise questions about Nigeria's aspirations. Our correspondent Adebola Adeduba went out, and here's what she brought us.
Nigeria has had its fair share of triumphs and tribulation at the Olympic Games. The country's best outing to date was at the summer 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, where it won a total of 2 gold and 1 bronze medals. The gold medals were won by the Dream Team, who triumphed in the football tournament, and Chioma Ajunwa, who excelled in the long jump event. But what was the winning formula behind this success? And what led to the poor performance of Nigeria's outing at the Paris Olympics?
The truth is, as a country, we have never prepared for the Olympics. Atlanta 96, what did we do? Accidental successes. That's what we got. We remember the story of Chioma Ajunwa. If not for Segun Odegbami that took his time to spend so much money, took around everywhere, Nigeria and outside of Nigeria, that gold medal that we celebrated would not have been there. Of course, let's talk about the footballers. We all remembered how those guys had to become emergency drivers, how they paid for their hotels to win that gold medal in 1996. Let's come to 2024, going to Paris. We're not ready for the Olympics. We're not prepared. You know, they say if you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail. That's a statement of fact. So we are not ready. How do you explain a country that releases money for the Olympic Games on the eve of that event? Serious countries will do that 7 years before. So that's our country, Nigeria. We are never ready. Let us continue to have accidental successes and we celebrate.
According to the Sport Minister, Senator John Eno, lessons have been learned and measures are being taken to prevent future occurrences.
My hope is that we can, take advantage of this very bad moment, of this very poor outing, disastrous, we may say. We can take advantage of it and turn it into a huge positive for Nigerian sports. So for me, my takeaway from this is that my hope is that we can use the outcome of this, as bad as it has been, as a huge positive for Nigerian sports.
But will these promises translate to improved performance? It remains to be seen if Nigeria has indeed learned her lesson and raised her bar. Only time will tell if the disappointing Olympic Games Paris 2024 performance will be a thing of the past, and if Nigeria will...
Only time will tell. And that's all at this hour right here on News Now. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. As another strike threatens to rock Nigeria, federal government has urged aviation unions to shelve planned action. Zimbabwean government suppression of dissent has continued, with arrested activists denied bail in Zimbabwe. And we also told you that death toll from Uganda landslide has risen to 34. Now remember that you can send us your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times at channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith, Atibi.